Chapter 7. Embutah. Pharaoh sat upon his throne, the serpent scepter in his hand, the double crown upon his head, Shepnuset at his side. He was very tired. His head spun with the events of the day, disputes to settle, requests for favors, ambassadors from Punt, from Sheba across the Red Sea. The crier called one more name, Amos, son of Neriah, ambassador from Hezekiah, king of Judah. Pharaoh's eyes widened. The man had approached the throne on his feet. There was a soft, shocked hiss of breath from the people in the great hall. Taharka leaned forward, no longer half asleep. The man was tall, brown, his black hair clubbed in a heavy braid. He was dressed like a traveler who has had no time to change. He moved like a prince, someone who would be at home in the courts of kings, but he was as lean and sinewy as a man of the desert. He bowed for courtesy when he approached the throne, then straightened and looked straight into the eyes of Pharaoh. This time the people began to murmur, a few to cry out in horror. The vizier's voice rose above them. "Where is your tribute, envoy, your gifts for the god?" The man made his reply to Taharka. "I bring no gifts, my lord. I have come in great haste. What I have to say—" Suddenly he swayed on his feet. Thinking he was about to fall, Taharka rose. "You are ill." The man steadied himself with his traveler's staff, but Taharka was remembering his lessons in healing at the school for the children of the god. The man's face was gray from exhaustion. Another few moments and he would collapse in earnest. "Bring him into the small chamber," he ordered, "and bring him some wine," said Shepnuset. They made their way the length of the great hall to a small room set aside for private audiences. The vizier, more fearful than ever since the death of the taster, tried to follow, but Taharka waved him back. This man was in no condition to play tricks. The door closed behind them, and the man Amos, in his travel-stained robe, leaned against it. A deaf servant brought him a chair and helped him into it. "Forgive me," said the man. "Don't talk. Wait for the wine." The wine was brought. After a while the grayish look left the man's face. "A good night's sleep is all I need. I forget when I had one last. There hasn't been time." Ambassador from Judah. Taharka was searching his mind, trying to remember. There had been a story long ago. Embutah had told him a story. "You have a sister kingdom, Israel." "Had," said Amos. "Israel is no more. We of Judah are all that is left of the Israelite tribes." The voice of Embutah came back to Taharka. "Your father had no help to give. Israel hasn't been heard from since." Taharka settled into his own chair. He was curious to hear what the man had to say. Shepnuset put a question. "Are you well enough to talk?" He nodded. "It's been many years since we have heard from Judah. Why are you here?" "To bring you news, and a warning, and to ask for your help." "The news first," said Shepnuset. The man raised his eyes, dark and troubled, but with the glimmer of a fierce fire. "Sidon has fallen to the Assyrians." "The Assyrians again!" There was a stillness about Taharka's heart. "Sidon, the great trading city across the desert of the east, on the northern sea." This was no idle news. "Soon," said the man, "they will be in Judah." "Why?" said Shepnuset. "Does not Judah send tribute to the Assyrians?" For a moment the man's head drooped. Then, with some effort, he again raised his eyes. "There comes a time," he said, "when people can bear no more." From somewhere inside himself he seemed to be summoning new strength. "When Israel fell, the father of my king hastened to send tribute to the Assyrians. He built an altar to the god of their city, Nineveh, and humbly begged the mercy of their king. For years we saw our children conscripted for their armies, and their slave gangs went hungry while our barley went to Nineveh, saw the silver drained from our treasury in Jerusalem. Then one day my king, my glorious king Hezekiah, Taharka, god king of the Nile, with the crown of the two kingdoms on his brow, could not help smiling just a little." Amos stiffened. "My king, son of David in the 13th generation, said, 'Enough.' He looked around our beautiful city Jerusalem and said, 'I will make it clean again.' He sent word through Judah and the coast. No more. No more silver to build the stables and the temples of Nineveh. No more children taken away to serve the tyrant. No more tribute. And then," he smiled at the memory, "and then he smashed the altar to the Assyrian god." The little room was very still. "He's crazy," thought Taharka. So is his king. And yet, somehow, deep inside him, he could feel a thrilling echo of the triumph in the voice of the man from Judah, the man whose king did not fear a foreign god. "So," said the god king, "that is why they will soon be in Judah." He was sure they would when they heard about that altar, and when the silver stopped coming in. The man Amos tried to rise. He couldn't quite make it, but he leaned forward and his eyes, dark and intent, focused on the eyes of Pharaoh. Taharka could not look away. "No, my lord, That is not the only reason. I said I had also come to bring you a warning. Listen well, my lord. Aided by his staff, he did manage to struggle to his feet. The Assyrians have a new king, Sennacherib. Taharka had heard the name. Make no mistake, Jerusalem means nothing to this man, a man still young, a greedy, ambitious man. His father conquered Babylon. What is Jerusalem to him? They have already robbed us of anything of value. No, to this new king, Jerusalem is only a snapping dog guarding a doorway, something that stands in his way. A doorway, thought Taharka, a doorway to the gold in the mines of Cush, a doorway to the green banks of the Nile. The man Amos nodded as if Pharaoh had really spoken. Yes, my lord, my king, my city Jerusalem, we are all that stands between the nations of the Nile and a very dark night, and time is short. Even now Assyrian agents are being sent throughout the world across the eastern desert. Already silver and gold has been paid out to men in high places, rewards for treason and murder. The lamps were flickering. The shadows really were gathering in the little chamber. Murder, the death of the taster, men in high places. What men? Which high places? The man from Judah collapsed suddenly into the chair. Forgive me, he said again, and again Taharka forgot everything else in his concern for the exhausted man. You must sleep, he said, even before food. We'll find you a bed in the outer courts. We'll talk about this later. There isn't much time for talk. Taharka looked at him in wonder. This was a strange man indeed. He came here, desperate for help, but on his feet, looking the god in the face, speaking to him as if he were any ordinary man. And now he seemed to be telling the god to hurry up and make up his mind. There is time, said Taharka soothingly. He did not meet with Amos the next few days. He saw him once, rested and well again, a new fire in his eyes. No time, no time, his eyes seemed to be saying. The news of Sidon's fall had become general knowledge. The council meetings grew loud. The general of the armies pressed and pressed. The time is right. They are occupied with other matters. An expeditionary force across the desert. If we miss this opportunity. Only the high priest had nothing to say. His thoughts seemed to be focused on something else. There was something in his silence that chilled Taharka more than all the warlike talk. It seemed to stir that other thought that was pressing on his heart. Somebody wants me dead. A messenger arrived from Embutah and demanded an audience with Pharaoh. He carried news that could not wait. He had made the journey in 14 days. Taharka sat in his cedarwood chair in the private chamber of the god and heard what the messenger had to tell him. There was a long silence. Then Taharka said, "Leave me." And when the man was slow to move, "Leave me now!" The darkness in the chamber, lit only by a small lamp, was like a black robe smothering him. He began to cry. He fell upon the great bed in the alcove and beat the cushions and sobbed. "Embutah! This is a spear, my little nephew. You grasp it so. They were not gods, your mother's people, but they were fine people. Too slow, great God, too slow. Move your sacred back." Embutah, all he had left of his mother. This time there was no question of the will of the gods. This had been no failure of the heart, no hunting accident. The uncle of the god had been found with a knife in his back. The little lamp flickered. Soon the oil would be burned away. Taharka watched it gutter. So the Assyrians were there, even in Cush, striking down all that was honest and good to make way for that dark night of their own making. Unless, for just a moment, a thought far down in his mind flickered upwards and gave him pause. But no, darkness like this could not arise from the green banks and life-giving water of his beloved Nile. He would not even think of it. A long time he sat without moving. Then he felt the anger. It welled up inside him like a bitter, gushing spring. The world was trembling. He was the god. He had been taught that it was up to him to keep it sane and steady. The Assyrians might be strong, but this was Egypt. Egypt that once had ruled the world. They would raise an army. 1 man out of every 10, armed with the iron-headed spears, chariots, and horses. Just as he was, in the middle of the night, he sent for the men he needed, the vizier, the general, and Amos, the envoy from Judah. You can have your expeditionary force. You can have your war with the Assyrians. Send to Embutah. I will meet with the council tomorrow. And he thought to himself, I will go with them. I will see them pay for what they have done. For the first time, the man from Judah knelt before the God King, not in worship, but in gratitude and relief. There was no misgivings in his eyes, and the eyes of the general of the army shone with an eager light.